Hello, and welcome to the April 26th JupyterLab weekly call. Today we have 14 people on the call, which I have to say I'm a little disappointed. If you have something you'd like to talk about, please add it to the agenda, which is linked in the chat. And if you don't, please sign in. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. But with all that being said, why don't we get started? The agenda was empty, so I put myself first, but this isn't really my subject. There are 3 outstanding issues that are release blockers, and each one of them has a corresponding PR. So I guess what we can do is we can look at those 3 individually, and if the people who authored either the PRs or the issues are on the call, maybe they could take it up. So let's open this up and see. So the first one is about search and replace with the string undefined. It was opened up by Mike, and
You're
there
not sharing
is
your screen if you're trying to.
no, I'm actually just saying the words. And the PR is authored by Andrew, who just spoke up. So why don't you tell us what the current state is, please?
So PR is ready for review and merge, as far as I can say, but it was not reviewed yet. So it's in the agenda under Andrew, and here is a link in the chat. So it's a one-line change. So this PR again would solve a new blocker issue created by Mike. Yeah.
Okay. I
So
just approved it because that one line seems like a sound line. So if somebody else also gives it a sandy check and is happy to merge it, I think that that's good, because all that was happening was there was type coercion going on and JavaScript undefined was being rendered as a string undefined. So initializing it to empty string seems open and shut, but just in case I'm missing something, a second pair of eyes maybe, but otherwise, cool, thank you.
yeah, no problems.
Okay, next is a PR opened by Fred, and this is for scrolling for insert cell run in advance. Okay, cool. It looks like, Mike, you've taken a look at it. There's been a lot of back and forth. Jason also has looked at it. Does anyone have an update on this? Is it stuck on something?
I think it just needs a second look after the changes has been introduced.
So there was a visual UI regression fail, like the similar that we were getting on the Marsa's PR, and the one I was getting on the line buttons, right, for a news message. So in terms of functionality, it's a separate question because we haven't reached parity with 3.7 or 3.6 rather, but yeah, we could merge this version, I think. It's just that the visual UI regression tests are failing.
Okay. And it's fully caught up with the base branch, is that right? So there's nothing like the snapshots will automatically fix themselves. Is it definitely caused by this PR?
So Mike, maybe you can help me here expand more on this. So the situation by like last night when I went to sleep was that we had 2 flaky snapshots. One of them was like associated with a new cell button appearing on top of the cell. And there was second one with a debugger window, I think, with variables not showing. And Mike indicated those to me, and I have like rolled them back to the previous version in 3 PRs. So 2 of them like these critical PRs, blocking PRs, the Frederick's one and Martha's one, and the third is my other PR. Let's not talk about it. And after that, the tests ran again, and there were still fails. So I just looked at that in the middle of the night, but haven't investigated that much yet.
Okay, so if there is a behavior that was incorrect and it's resolved here, but the behavioral change causes the visual regression test to fail, I think we can create a secondary issue that says fix the visual regression, but the release maybe doesn't need to be blocked on that, because the sooner we graduate to RC, the sooner we can actually release the final. So
there is nothing in this PR which causes a visual regression. There is just that one of the pull requests which added click to add cell has introduced a very flaky snapshot, actually 2 snapshots. And these snapshots are causing a lot of noise when we update snapshots using the bot to generate snapshots on CI. It is introducing this flaky, problematic snapshots that we need to manually revert every time that we update snapshots now.
So then, Mike, are you comfortable with merging this PR?
Yeah, as much as I'm not convinced about the snapshots that change because the behavior has changed. I just wanted to take another look at this. But if anyone else could also try it to see how the new behavior, because this pull request, one, fixes a bug, second, changes the behavior, how switching to active cell behaves. So it adds a small bug in at the bottom. And I think this is probably fine, but I think it would also benefit someone else to take a look beside me. I'm fine with this PR otherwise.
So I think it's reasonable to visit the question of what we want the behavior to be. I just don't think we need to block a release on it. So maybe can someone volunteer to write an issue on that aspect of it so that we can merge this PR and move ahead to an RC? Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so then the third one is Martha's PR. Sorry, I opened up the wrong link, which is about additional properties in the settings editor, generating a validation error. And is Martha on the call? Is there any? Yeah. Okay, cool. Hi.
Yeah, so the problem is fixed, and I think the feedback I got was to add a test, and I think Fred actually added one for me. So I think it's ready, other than it looks like some tests are failing in the CI. I'm not sure. It looks like Andrew was looking into that. I don't know if you have anything to say, Andrew.
That's the issue I was talking about and referring to. So
Okay.
there is the same issue on 2 blocking PRs, on Frederick's PR and on your PR, the visual UI regression test. Yeah, fail.
Incidentally, does VS Code's JSON launch file allow comments? They're using a version of JSON that allows line comments, I guess. That's neat. I didn't know that. Okay, cool. So it sounds like we can merge all 3 of these today, and maybe there's follow-on issues, but that resolves what's blocking a release. Great. Andrew, you had other points on here that weren't just covered. Is that correct?
So I wanted to clarify also on 4.0 pointer release plan, but I guess we're, fixing blocking issues as soon as possible and then doing an RC and then waiting 2 weeks and then doing 4.0 pointer release. Is that what
That's
the
the
plan
idea.
is?
We'll probably need more than one RC because we already know we had outstanding issues that need to be solved. They just weren't critical release blockers. So there'll probably be an RC phase that only lasts a couple of weeks, but there might be more than one RC within that phase, I think, but I'm not sure. What is, I don't know, was everyone else thinking about this? I see other people on the call who have thought about this problem each time we've had a release. So what's your feeling on it? I'll call names if I have to.
Can you rephrase the question?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. So is RC period 2 weeks? My first question before the 4.0 pointer release, and the second question, I want to double check that we can still merge patches into the RC before the 4.0 pointer release.
Okay. Question 2, the answer is unambiguous. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Question 1, here's how I would frame it. Do we need 2 weeks following the last RC before the final? Or can we have multiple RCs in a 2-week period? And as long as they're all small incremental and nothing that is surprising, we stay within that 2-week time frame. Does anyone have an opinion on that question?
Can I ask another question? What makes an like, for example, RC1 versus RC2 versus RC1 with just like patches merged in, or any patch makes it like RC2, RC3, and whatever?
Any patch needs a new version number,
Okay.
and RC is just a version number. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's
okay,
no such thing as patching a release
see.
candidate. It's just a new
I see, I see.
candidate.
I see. Okay.
Okay, so in the chat, Jason Grout says 2 weeks from today is the first day of JupyterCon. I'm happy with a total period of 2 weeks if no huge blockers show up. Does anyone, I agree with that, but what's the temperature of the room? Does anyone have a disagreement with that plan? I see a couple thumbs ups in the chat. I see a thumbs up not in the chat. They could all be the same people for all I know, but I'm not seeing any thumbs downs, so that's good, right? Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, next person is Soo-Yoon.
Hi. Nice to meet you. I just have some questions about JupyterLite. Since I recently started to incorporate JupyterLite into my website. So let me know if this is not the right place for me to ask such questions. So one question is it possible to separate JupyterLite front end from its kernels?
So there is, because there isn't a weekly JupyterLite call, this is absolutely the right place because a bunch of JupyterLite developers are here. I don't know the answer to your question, but I hope one of them does.
By separating, what do you mean exactly? You mean
Yeah, what are you actually going to bring?
So what I want to do is, so right now I'm showing the entire JupyterLite website. I'm redirecting to JupyterLite that's hosted on my GitHub public repo. So I was wondering if I can just incorporate the JupyterLite components into as a small component into my website. I don't know if that made sense. Like instead of redirecting it, I want to make it incorporate to high level web component. So I was wondering if that separation was possible.
So for example, there are projects whose online documentation embeds a Jupyter code console that comes from JupyterLab, but isn't like the full application. Is that what you mean?
I think you're referring to REPL, R-E-P-L. So I actually want to use the JupyterLab front end. So if that's currently not available, I tried looking at the source code, but it was very difficult for me to understand. So I can try to separate it myself, but I couldn't figure out, which is my second question, how Pyodide kernel for JupyterLab is connected to front end. Is it through Lumino? So that's
so basically the architecture, JupyterLab has to replace both Jupyter server, JupyterLab server, the kernel manager, Jupyter client. I mean, it's half the stack. That runs, it's not in another thread or worker or anything like that. It's in the main thread of the UI. And then the client connects to that and overloads its service worker or its service manager, which handles fetch and WebSocket and all that stuff. Yeah, there's a link there. It's kind of out of date. The kernels themselves actually run inside of web workers, and they only communicate over post message. There's no dirty and whatever. That could be on another domain if it was set up properly. So theoretically, you could make a hidden iframe and create a kernel and then talk to that iframe over your own post message bus. But then you're on the hook for doing, like, that's why I asked, what are you actually going to bring to this? Because if you're not going to do contents and you're not going to do MIME renderers and you're not going to do widgets, then everything's very easy. If you want those things, it all gets very hard very quickly.
I don't understand what you're trying to remove from the JupyterLab UI exactly.
Oh, could you, Sylvain, could you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand what you're trying to remove from JupyterLab. You're trying to not use everything. Am I correct?
That's right. So I'm just trying to make it lightweight because I want to increase the speed of running each cell. And I saw that some things that are involved, I tried to remove from requirements.txt, but it was still a little bit slow through like that. And all I want, and also I want to have some control over what kind of libraries I can already have it downloaded. And that's why I wanted to have control over separating the front end and back end and incorporate it through my website.
Gotcha. So I think maybe then the answer would be to not use the Pyodide kernel, and like Jeremy can talk to that, and use this other kernel that we have based in Python, which allows you to make a smaller bundle of packages that you host then. So currently, if you use the Pyodide kernel, everything is being downloaded from a CDN. And if you use Python kernels, you would deploy your own environment as well on your website, including all the Python packages. But it may be smaller if you pick a smaller list. So Jeremy can maybe explain. I don't know where this would be documented.
Yeah, it's in the how-to guides, and I also just posted a link to another project that is reusing parts of the JupyterLab packages, but I think in that case it's a bit different. They only used server part, and by server I mean the piece of software that runs in a browser to mimic the Jupyter server, and the kernels. They are not using the the JupyterLite front-end, which means, JupyterLab and the Jupyter Notebook interfaces. And those could be also interesting to have a look at. And I think there are some people who tried also to have a web component for JupyterLite, but I think they were just using a notebook directly. I'm not sure what's the status of the project, but can probably look it up quickly. And maybe that would be more what you will be looking for, like if you want to integrate it in your host page. But there are still a lot of things that you're going to hit. I think like loading times. I'm not sure if there is something we can do at that time, because you still need to download quite a lot of things from the internet to be able to start the kernels. So that would still be an issue, I think.
Thank you, Jeremy. Somebody asked me what I meant by speed through the chat. What I meant is that the first cell always takes about between 10 seconds to 40 seconds to run. And the following cells becomes faster and faster and maybe already fast by then. So that's what I meant by speed.
Okay, so then Sylvan's suggestion of using the Zeus Python kernel instead of Pyodide probably resolves your problem, because
it downloads
the-
everything as a giant tarball up front. So time to first running cell will not be lower.
Depends on the size of the tarball.
yeah,
Depends on the size of the tarball. And both of them will cache the hell out of it after it gets there. So there's today there are limits to how much that first time to first executable code can be done. There's some PRs in the pipeline for cutting a few megabytes out of Pyodide, and Zeus might get the ability to install arbitrary stuff from PyPy, but there are some real trade-offs.
I see, thank you.
William has some suggestions in the chat as well. Yeah, I mean, I guess this is going to be a process of trying out some of the different combinations and seeing if any of them gets you closer to what you want. If you try some of these combinations and find that you have more questions, both here and the JupyterLab repo issues are good places to follow up. Yeah, but thank you for bringing it up here. It's great because we haven't had a JupyterLab question before, so that's nice.
Thank you so much. I'll let you know how it goes.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for your interest in JupyterLite.
Thank you.
Okay, next person on the agenda is Mike.
I just have one pull request, which concerns the search in selection and search in general, which needs review. And just wanted to highlight because it was quite a long time in the making, and the behavior of search after it was rewritten to support Windows notebooks was a little bit different, a little bit broken, sometimes quite a lot broken. And I think that this PR finally polishes the remaining issues to the level at which we or users would be really happy with that. And I would very much like to see this pull requests in next beta or release candidates, just so that we can get this out to a larger user base to test and highlight any remaining issues with search function. Because yeah, that was a feature that we had, but it was basically rewritten from scratch for 4.0 release.
Okay, is anyone on the call willing to volunteer to review this?
Yeah, I can review this.
Awesome, cool. And Mike, what I would say is even if we put out RC1 like today, and this isn't merged until Friday, we could just put out RC2 on Friday. We don't have to stall very long between those if we're proposing a 2-week RC period in general.
Yeah, I agree with that. I generally think we can even create some kind of tag to prioritize certain issues between our RC release and 4.0.0 release. Like, you know, not maybe blockers, but I don't know, first priority, and prioritize those for work and review.
Cool. All right. Nick, you're up next.
Yo, it would be cool to get types in the JupyterLab. There's a lot of code in there. There's a lot of Python. Getting it in there would be very helpful. I don't think it should block anything. And there's a few upstreams now that we've adopted that would make things harder. You know, so we can discuss that after the fact or whatever, but there's some techniques that we could use to bootstrap some of that stuff. It doesn't make anything faster until you go for MyPyC. But I don't think we should be doing that on JupyterLab anytime soon. So it's not going to help anybody. It's not going to necessarily help anybody migrate because we haven't had a tremendous amount of API changes, but on the Python side. But I feel like there's, I don't know, there's some stuff there that does make it harder to reason about if your stuff that has deep integrations is going to work between versions of those, and the fact that we're split between JupyterLab, Jupyter Server, JupyterLab Server, and now all the YDoc stuff, and almost none of that's typed. So I don't know. It's a longer discussion. Get people's minds around it. That's all. Any thoughts there, anybody? 3, 2, 1, next person.
Next person's gonna be issue triage. You sure you don't have comments?
Oh, there was an additional discussion point I created a little bit later.
No,
after
I
started.
know. I'm being facetious. Okay.
So could I talk about that? So I personally want to attend JupyterCon, but I think, and I know maybe I don't know, maybe something like that is planned. But I think it would be nice to have a 4.0.0 RC bug bash during JupyterCon as a part of JupyterCon sprints, for example. We could concentrate on bug fixing, maybe also bug discovery. I think bug discovery would be really nice and important. We had a bug bash meetings within our teams that were very productive, yielded like, you know, thousands of bugs per session. And the ones that we tried to organize with the community online wasn't very well attended. So I thought maybe the one in person could be, you know, more popular, but there is no question in that bug bashes are useful and they help to discover issues early, and, you know, discovering issues early helps improve usability and not block releases, for example.
So that
Yeah.
would be worse if we actually have not released JupyterLab 4 by JupyterCon.
There's also the reality that we're not out of bugs to solve for JupyterLab 4. We've just punted many of them and said they're not release blockers, but they're real bugs that need solving right away. So I think a bug bash that bashes bugs is better than a bug bash that finds bugs.
I would be fine with that. I think any bug bash would be good.
I mean, I agree with Mike's perspective that, like, if you're looking for yield, you're probably going to be able to find more bugs than fix them in the duration of a sprint. But I agree, if people can pick up a bug and fix it, that'd be even better.
Yeah, I'll edit like a comment to that and like bug fixing. Okay, that would be awesome. So if anyone wants to organize that, for example, someone who gives a 4.0.0 talk and received an email with invitation to initial, like, make a sprint, yeah, it would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so we have also a point from Rosio.
Yeah, sorry, I just have a quick question. I'm trying to add some documentation for like what the extension status means. And I think well, I came across an issue where just the status of the extension was not okay. And that led me to realizing that there were more than just the JupyterLab like packages that were being like compared to like at least from the packages that are dependencies in my extension were being compared to the packages in JupyterLab core, I believe. And I'm just wondering if it is correct to think that if I'm right in my thinking that maybe all the dependencies that are declared for an extension are then expected to match if they are in JupyterLab core in order for an extension status to be considered okay. And just, I guess, just for reference, I came across this issue because I was doing the upgrade extension script and I was having some trouble getting the extension I was trying to upgrade to work. So I tried manually updating that extension, and I was just running into that issue where I updated all the JupyterLab packages, but it seemed like React and React DOM were also supposed to be updated to match a different version. And it's presumably the version used in JupyterLab.
I don't. Where do you encounter these statuses? Where do they show up?
Oh, sorry. This is the outcome of running a JupyterLab extension list and seeing like, is my extension like enabled or okay, or the red X you get when something's wrong with it.
Got it. So the enabled and disabled, those are just user things, right? User land, like JupyterLab extension enable, JupyterLab extension disable. The
Right.
okay is just like the default, it's happy, right? And I guess the X is it's broken. So I think it automatically resolves whether your dependencies are sound dependencies for the version of lab that you're running them in. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think, yes, if you're relying on a dependency that is another extension and it's another lab extension, and that extension itself would not be okay, then your extension's not going to be okay. Is that what you're asking?
I think yes, along those lines. I guess when I first started looking into like upgrading an extension, I was thinking the where my focus was where was in the JupyterLab packages that were dependencies in my extension, those that I was pulling from JupyterLab specifically. So I think it was harder for me to realize, oh, there's something wrong with some other dependency like React or something along those lines. But I think from my findings was just there's specific functionality that's called, and it compares the dependencies. And I was just kind of, I guess I could do a little bit more testing just to figure out if I have another extension installed, if it has some other dependency, if that will compare everything. But yeah, I think maybe I could do a little bit more digging too there. Mhm. Oh,
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have something smarter to say. Does anyone else on the call have more input on this?
Just this thing I called out in chat. You know, the sensitive packages are listed in JupyterLab staging package JSON. There's a whole big section under singletons, and those are the ones that can cause you trouble. But there's other ones that can also cause you trouble, like CodeMirror, because those are not marked as singletons for whatever reason. So it really depends on the specific package. React, I don't know. I don't know. It is React.
okay, thank you. I'll definitely take a look at that. Now, thank you. I'll just throw out that I have some documentation I'm adding, and if anybody would like to take a look and correct anything I say incorrectly in the documentation, I would really appreciate it. But thank you for your help today.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so we have 19 minutes left on the call. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up before we switch over to triage? Okay, Jason, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to keep recording? We don't usually record the issue triage portion.
Good point. I will stop the recording. Brace yourselves.